Hello and welcome to the Radiate Wellness Podcast with your host, metaphysician, Reiki master, and hypnotherapist, Christy Clemens Hoffman. Each week, we will discover teachings, tips, and tools to radiate your best life ever with practitioners, authors, and luminaries to help you on your path. Wellness, joy, peace, abundance. What do you want to radiate?
Welcome back to the Radiate Wellness Podcast. In this episode, we radiate radical empathy with Justin Boardman. Retired Detective Justin Boardman was in law enforcement for 15 years with the West Valley City Police Department. His first 8 years were spent as a patrol officer in this very active city, and he was awarded the Police Star as well as multiple life-saving, distinguished service, and meritorious service awards. Later, Boardman served 7 years in the Special Victims Unit. During his first year in investigations, Justin was awarded Investigator of the Year, conducted nearly 300 forensic child victim interviews and 140 adult sexual assault victim interviews. Justin co-authored, along with Donna Kelly, a trauma-informed victim interview protocol for adult victims of sexual assault. This new protocol uses the neurobiology of trauma to gain additional information to be used in the investigation. This process has been studied and has shown to increase prosecutions along with procedural changes. Justin now presents and consults locally in Utah and nationally on a variety of subjects. His focus is to strengthen investigations in victim-centered, suspect-focused, and trauma-informed ways. He also believes in pushing culture change, leaving active police work to focus on culture change within the community he loves. Justin has been awarded the Utah Visionary Voice Award presented by the National Sexual Violence Resource Center and the 2017 Public Policy Award by the Utah Council on Victims of Crime. Locally, Justin has sat on the board of directors for the Utah Coalition Against Sexual Assault and the Rape Recovery Center. Justin is also an avid rock hound and a good friend. Hi, Justin. Thanks for joining me today. It's nice.
Sorry, breath mint. I know that we're virtual, but still.
It always helps to have good hygiene and whatever. So nice to see you.
I may not have showered, but it's okay.
I'm enjoying your t-shirt, Practice Radical Empathy. I mean, that's what we're doing today, right?
I think so. I hope so. It's hard.
Why is practicing radical empathy hard?
Oh my goodness. I mean, I guess, for example, maybe you think if you drive like I do, sometimes other drivers kind of push buttons. But then again, I probably push buttons too. And so as that escalates, words start flying and so on and so forth. Instead of taking that deep breath and having some empathetic sort of thoughts. So maybe that person is more advanced age and having problems reading signs, or maybe their kids yelling in the back seat and they're slowing down to deal with that. There's all sorts of ways to practice. It's much easier to jump to the middle finger, if you will.
Right.
As much as that can certainly might make you feel better for a minute and fully express yourself, but not it's in more of a negative way. We all have our own ripple effect. So the way that we interact with the world, with your community, has a ripple effect that goes on for forever.
It does. Every action has all of these consequences around it. And we just never know how our words or actions are going to affect others. And just we're affected, but we have an impact on other people as well. There's a lot of talk about empathy and being empathetic, et cetera. How do you define empathy personally?
Empathy for me is more of a feeling. So it's more of what radiates within, right? And it has this calming sense for me. To have more empathy, it's to feel along with somebody and feel what they're experiencing in their life. And when I do that, that helps me gain more compassion. And again, that feeds on itself. And that ripple effect, that radiate effect, if you will, keeps going. And so when you're working with somebody or talking with somebody that has experienced trauma or a bad situation, It's not as condescending as even sympathy can be sometimes. And sympathy is one of those things that we've talked about, as a society. That's good to have sympathy, but sympathy is not feeling along with somebody. It's more like, everything's going to be okay, which is still better than the middle finger, but not as good as empathy might be.
Yeah. Empathy's kind of taking a hard rap right now. Yeah. Being criticized. Right.
Oh, absolutely it is. A lot of people may feel like it's a weakness because you are vulnerable when you have more empathy. It's not the case. It's actually very powerful.
It's extremely powerful because it builds those connections between people, I think.
Exactly. And it doesn't drive separation, which currently is the norm let's just say society, but we could certainly say the United States is driving that wedges in. And as we get separated and those bonds break, more negative things can seep in and take over.
I think we can see others as separate from us. Not in empathy. And it's so much easier to be unkind or cruel to someone who's different and separate from you.
Absolutely.
Do you think that we're born having this empathy, or do we develop it? How do we come across empathy?
And that's interesting. So, we're getting into, I am not formally trained when it comes to psychology. By life experience, I've had a lot of life. And so, are we born with it? I think we're open to either way, whether we're in utero or when we're born. That bond that you have as a baby, having to depend on someone for everything, right? For food, for life, for shelter, all of that stuff. If that person does not feel empathetic, those bonds are not made that early. So what happens, or what radiates from that moment in time, if it's empathetic and you're in a loving household and you are cared for, held, shown affection, that human being is going to have that as the core inside. And whatever they touch in the future will be more positive. If it's negative and they try to regulate without the empathy, without the love, if you will, that has a very good chance of going another direction. To find different ways that babies might do different things to compensate for not being nurtured, like waking up in the middle of the night and maybe they're crying and nobody comes in, right? To give them the bottle or whatever in the middle of the night. So then you start looking at how are they regulating themselves. And sometimes it's this roller coaster ride. If you're a teenager trying to fill those gaps, maybe that's a substance issue. Maybe that's a sex issue. Maybe that's something like that, right? And it can certainly be negative. If I'm making myself somewhat clear, sometimes I'm muddled.
No, you are. In my world, we would call that root chakra trauma.
Okay.
The root chakra has to do with our early feelings of are we nurtured? Do we have our needs met? And these things, if not addressed as a child, will continue throughout life. And in fact, I share this office suite with a therapist for children who have severe trauma like that, and they just don't learn how to trust. And that's really hard.
If you look at the ACEs study, the Adverse Childhood Experience Study, and you can find that like on acesconnection.org.com or something like that. It has a great website for that. So this root chakra thing, tell me more about that. I know that, and I'm a stone guy. I love rocks and stones, but I haven't really studied the chakra stuff. So tell me more about that.
The root chakra, the root for a reason. It's at the base of our spine, and every chakra has to do with different beliefs and qualities in our life. And the root chakra has to do with safety, all of these things that we need.
Foundation. Yeah.
Foundation. Exactly. I think it's the most important one. It's the foundation. You talked about babies crying. There have been studies in orphanages that babies learn to stop crying because what's going to take care of them.
Right.
So that can come back and affect us our entire life if we don't have, it's that foundational stuff. It's that foundational stuff. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And then this is something that you work with institutions, police and government, local governments and different institutions. Yeah. So is this something that you can teach? Is this empathy component?
Yeah, I think it's something that can be learned and practiced. It's very hard you really need to look inside yourself first to see what's keeping you back. But you can also practice it in shorter periods of time. I work a lot with the justice system, right? Police departments, prosecutors, and the like. And so when I'm training a little bit of mindfulness, you are practicing hyper focus in short amount of time. And as you do that, you can start focusing on your feelings and how things make you feel. So again, what's radiating off of somebody? What's radiating off of you? Or in a negative situation, if I'm having an encounter with somebody who is upset, not happy in a police capacity, I can start feeling with them, which actually makes me more situationally aware and safe in case something goes wrong. And I can see how my talking is working. So if I'm able to talk them down or to calm them down, I can feel with them, and it works. So the area of our brain, right? I like to talk about the brain in two different pieces: prefrontal cortex, like the thinking brain, and this defense circuitry that has a whole bunch of things in it, like the amygdala, hippocampus, hypothalamus, all that stuff, the defense circuitry. Or so when a car blows through an intersection and you're about halfway out and you go, oh shit, and you stomp on the brake without thinking about it, it's this area of the brain that is overtaking your thinking part to save your butt. Because if you would have thought about it going, maybe I should put on the brake, it's too late. So it will jump in. But this, I like to think about it as a smoke detector. It's always scanning. And when something starts going awry or smoke is being added to the smoke detector, it will send off signals. But it works super fast. I mean, there's studies, it's astronomical, the ratio or how fast it works compared to your thinking brain. So it's always scanning. So you are also reading people's faces right back here. Threat, not a threat, threat, not a threat. And so if you are showing genuine empathy behind your eyes, right back here, the other person's brain can sense that and their guard will also lower so that wiser brains will kick in to communicate, solve whatever the problem might be.
Yeah, I had a therapist one time that said when emotion goes up, cognition goes down.
Yes, exactly. And it's true.
It's true.
Right? If you've ever argued with somebody, which most of us probably have, you start skipping words, it's just not coming out, then you just go, and, storm off or what have you.
So how do you teach this empathy, this connection, de-escalation to, say, police forces?
Well, I think we have to look inside ourselves first and understand what's going in our own bodies first before we can understand recognizing it in other people. And that's the hard thing. In the justice system, we want to put a Band-Aid on it and run to the next thing. And that's not getting the healing done on the inside. So we want to try these mindfulness sort of techniques or meditation. I'm not a great meditator. I usually use Insight Timer, which is a free app on your phone. It has a paid side that has meditation, guided meditation. And I can tell if I've been doing it for a week or so. I can tell how I interact with people and emotionally feel. Problem is, I'm not a good meditator. So I do more mindfulness sort of techniques. One of them is I like to go rock hounding. And what that does is you're training your subconscious to recognize things that catch your attention. So that will also apply to your feelings and what's going on inside, so that you can tell that something's starting to bubble up and it's not good. So let's take a look at that and change the feeling. Or, wow, my guts aren't feeling very good. I wonder what's going on down there. I'm going to pay more attention to that. And sometimes we can find health problems before they come out all the way, because you're able to hyper focus or have that thought in the back of your head. So I also do that for situational awareness, which is the rock hounding stuff. But you can also do that in bigger cities. So I take pictures of sewer covers, right? So manhole covers. And what you do, and then I have a file on Google Drive, I just send them over there. And so as I'm walking through cities, some people are like, oh, I'm afraid of alleyways or whatever. What this does is it takes down that which creates health problems. It's also one of those little check marks for PTSD. And your brain is always scanning for sewer covers, which opens up your range of your peripheral vision. And it actually makes you safer because if something is out of the ordinary, your brain's going to go really quick to hyperfocus on it. And so you actually get a jump on the threat, if you will, or the car coming through the intersection. And with sewer covers, you'd be amazed how many different ones there are. And then there's ones that go for each town, at cities and countries. They mix them up too. So it's just kind of a fun game.
It's super fun. Now, of course, I know you personally, and I know about your history. You've been, a policeman, detective, and been in police force. So at what point did you feel like, okay, wait a minute. Here I am doing this work, and now I need to switch over and start training people in this empathy and trauma response. Like what that switch for you?
Wow. So that's going back some years. And it's important. And what that was around 2011, 2012. I happened to stumble into a training on the neurobiology of trauma. And the justice system likes to stay in its silos and not communicate outwards. But some of the psychology world actually made it in to start training a tiny bit. And I happen to be some of the first people to be trained in the country on this neurobiology of trauma stuff. And what it did is it showed us how your brain and your body reacts when it is severely traumatized. And your body will react certain ways, as well as the recording of memory. So you might have gaps in your memory, or it might not be in chronological order. It's all over the place. But when somebody who's been severely traumatized, which police officers and the justice system interact with daily, you present all messed up. And if you think back on your experience in life, when maybe your kiddo lied to you about stealing the last cookie in the cookie jar, and you're going at them, they can't keep their stories straight and their timeline is all messed up, and you catch them in a lie and you're like, yeah, got it, right? Made him confess. Well, that he was lying, and you saw the traits and the way that they're presenting to you. The problem is when somebody is severely traumatized and is trying to bring back up those memories, they present in the same way as someone who was a liar, was on fire. And so we wrote off cases because we felt like they were lying to us. And where that really had the biggest effect was in domestic violence and sexual assault cases. And so we started closing these cases, or always have closed these cases from the very beginning, because people presented in a way that was counterintuitive to us. And we were wrong. I did bad things. I know I booked victims of domestic violence into jail because I didn't know what I didn't know. And there's certainly a lot of guilt with that. But I came back and started teaching it, and had officers having these aha moments similar to that I did. And so that ripple effect, that radiation from that moment in time, hopefully has continued to help officers grow, but also survivors to find some sort of justice in the justice system. The justice system wasn't set up for that. It's the criminal justice system. It's not the victim justice system. And so we try to provide as much procedural justice as we can, but trying to train officers is extremely difficult to get in front of them because of funding, because of our biases. We still have lots and lots and lots of people in the justice system that don't understand the neurobiology of trauma. And once you do, you can see inside yourself a lot better, which creates more empathy and compassion and radiates out into society in a much better and caring way. You don't just roll up on somebody who's having an opioid overdose and go, it's natural selection, right? It's now somebody that has a substance use disorder that's trying to mellow out this roller coaster ride of life. And it's easier just to do that through a substance. And so it's actually a human being that's experiencing this and are worth using your Narcan or the nose spray stuff, right? So it's out.
It does. You know about the people who are crimes or they're on drugs. But there's also a trauma among the police officers.
Oh, amen. Yeah.
Man, how do police officers' trauma perhaps get in the way of them being empathetic and feeling?
So it does in the way like crazy, because those feelings are uncomfortable. To have some of those negative feelings as the tragedy actually affect you. And that's why the mindfulness and resiliency helps mellow out that roller coaster. So cops will ignore it at all costs. So police officers were trained to respond to emergency situations, put a band-aid on it, and then go to the next call. We don't know what's going to happen afterwards. We try to get them services or at least recommend them. But in the next hour, we're going to be going to a car crash. Then we'll be going to a domestic, or we'll be doing whatever our sergeant tells us to do. And then when we have tragedies, we do the same thing, which is push those feelings into the back of our brain and then keep going. You know, I liken it to you park a car underneath a tree, right? And it will get crapped on and you try to wash it off, and then more ads, and it just gets to be too much. And that's what happens to us. And so we aren't able to handle it as well, or we dig deeper and the walls come up, and then we don't interact with society very well. We get closed off. We stick to just the people that are in our inner circle that we depend on every day. And then with the hypervigilance training that happens, we do that. So that means everybody's trying to kill us that's not in a uniform or part of first responders. And so our trust levels go way down. That's the fault of our police academies too. We are taught that the world is a very lethal place, and most people are trying to kill us. And they do that so that we go home alive. We're looking for the warning signs. But it gives us PTSD in the police academy. So we get PTSD in training, then we're given a gun and we're told to be social workers, and we don't know how to do that effectively. I mean, it's kind of funny to think about, but it's the truth. What's not funny either. And that PTSD, turns into cortisol. It goes into our guts and makes us unhealthy. And then if you look at a police officer at the beginning of their career, and at the end, they're going to have those cortisol things, and we die of heart disease like crazy.
Now, sounds like, this component that you're teaching is this in trauma response and trauma informed, care needs to be taught at the academy.
Amen. Yes.
And you come around, it's too late.
I'm sorry?
By the time you come around, it might be too late.
Oh, yeah. And some people will get it when I train, some people won't. And it needs to be trained in every aspect of the police academy, from use of force to arrest control tactics to investigation skills. It needs to be a part of all of it. And, in some states, there's a couple hours now within the police academy. Utah teaches a couple hours. I know I worked with Iowa, putting some into their curriculum, and there's a few other states that have done that. It needs to be a whole lot more. The problem is they're needed so badly, and budgets are the way that they are. The police academies don't have as much training as you might think that they would. So it's usually just a couple months in the academy. So on average, our police academies run about 780 training hours. And in domestic violence and sexual assault, which is my sounds kind of weird to say specialty, but that's my specialty, usually runs about 13 to 15 hours out of those 780. And out of, let's say, 15 hours, about half of those hours are how to respond and approach these cases without getting killed. And then the rest is more about the subject matter, which is immense. And then we're sent out into the real world, about 780 hours on average. And then you look at cosmetologists, although I don't go, obviously, right? Cosmetology, their average hours to do their job to be state certified is about 1,500 hours. So almost double what it takes to give somebody a gun and told to go out and police.
Right.
So yeah, it doesn't add up.
No. And when you travel all the time, you're always traveling to different places,
Yeah.
going to conferences, doing trainings, everything. Do you find people being resistant at all to what you're teaching? I don't want to take too much of your time, but I would like to ask you a few simple favors. First of all, please rate, review, and share this podcast wherever you're listening. It sounds like a simple little thing, and it is, but it has a huge impact for us because it helps other people find us in the podcasting algorithms. I don't know how it works, but I do know that it helps a lot. Next, if you would subscribe or follow wherever you're listening, whether that's YouTube or Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Pandora, Spotify, wherever you're listening, just hit subscribe or follow, and that helps you and it helps us. It helps you because then you receive notifications when we have a new episode that's out. It helps us because, again, algorithm magic, I don't know what happens, but it helps. And then finally, you can support our podcast in a tangible way by going to radiatewellnesscommunity.com/podcast and then click on support the show. Now, we have a new feature too. We are now on Patreon. You can find us on Patreon. You can also find the link to Patreon when you go to radiatewellnesscommunity.com/podcast. So on Patreon for $3 a month or $5 a month, you can support your metaphysical and spiritual growth. You can learn about upcoming guests and you can get early and ad-free versions of the shows. So please support us. This podcast is free for you to listen, but we have costs, and quite frankly, they come out of my pocket. So if you like this content, if you get a lot out of it, please see what you can do to give back. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
What?
Hippie bullshit. But it's hippie BS that works, especially when it comes to mindfulness and resiliency. I do have people who are like, no, they're still just making stuff up. And they're not. So, yeah, you have resistance, but then you also have some that get it. And those are what you're hoping that to try to help change what's going on out there. It's been years, but
Realize. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, please.
I said a little bit by a little bit.
A little bit. If they would just realize that this is going to make their jobs easier, it's going to make them effective at their jobs.
Absolutely. And you may go to a domestic violence case and the person is not ready to leave that relationship. That can be frustrating. That's more the norm than it is the exception. And they're not ready. And you can't make people leave, but you can give them empathy and compassion and services. And when they're ready, they'll access. But then the frustration comes when you keep on going out to the same house. But practicing the empathy and the compassion, they will leave when they're ready and when it's time. And it looks different to everybody. So when you do that, you're passing less trauma onto that person, is going to be passing less trauma onto that person, and that radiates out. Therefore, if you did a negative experience and you went in there and started yelling at everybody, you take 2 people to jail, whatever, that's going to be negative experience for those people. And that's going to radiate out. So you're also making yourself safer in the future and your cohorts safer in the future by doing it this way, the right way.
The right way.
Yeah.
You hear stories about police coming in and the residents just automatically having distrust, they reacting in a negative way.
Mm-hmm.
Presence of police.
Yeah. And houses are lethal places to go into when you're in these situations. But if they're not as lethal if you're practicing mindfulness and resiliency, because your situational awareness is much better than if you were practicing the hypervigilance, much safer.
Now, you, of course, train police departments and
Mhm.
police officers, but what other organizations do you reach out to?
Anybody that'll listen to me. And so it can be anybody. I do a lot in so for nurses that are say in ERs, emergency rooms, those sort of things, so they can recognize the trauma and communicate with people, and vice versa, recognize it within themselves. Community organizations teaching trauma and the neurobiology of trauma. It's not totally about the justice system. It's about just everyday communication. It's something that can be taught in junior high school and high school, and it doesn't have to be sex related. It could be biology related. It can show examples in the animal world. You can show examples in the human world, and it's how your brain works. It's science, and so it doesn't have to be about that evil three-letter S word um, that gets shut down in our legislatures. And but when you do that, the the radiation effect, the ripple effect of that is in a few years, the people that are in junior high and high school now will be starting to sit on our juries. And so when the science is brought back up, they might recognize that neural pathway might open up and they might go, oh, I get it now. Right. And that will help with their biases. And bias, we talk about it and everybody's like, right? It's bad. Another four-letter word. Bias is a human condition. And we all have that human condition. I don't like raw onions and hamburgers. I have a bias against it. There's all sorts of things. Bias is a human condition. And it's important to question that sometimes in ourselves. It can be uncomfortable, but it's a good thing. It's growth. Uncomfortableness is growth.
I agree. Yeah, you wouldn't
Yeah.
go to a movie where nothing ever happens to the main character and everything is great because there's no challenge, there's no growth, right?
Right. Exactly.
So, which brings me to my next question is that you this radical empathy to people in all types of jobs, but
Yeah.
how does it show up in your life?
Ooh, it shows up in my life when I have to practice it in front of a crowd. Sometimes when you get that clash in the classroom where somebody keeps on questioning things, and questioning things is okay, but it can also build up. Also, there comes a point where my knowledge just runs out, which is okay. And that's when people need to dig on their own and find the answers. I can point people in directions. So in my life, I think it shows up more when I work with survivors, because I still do. And when I work with even family and friends, maybe not work with, but socialize with, it makes those communications much easier too. My patience level, I'm an ADHD person. So as a kid, ADHD also had this very fast trigger to anger, frustration, and no patience. But my patients are pretty good now. Sometimes they'll still snap, but for the most part, my patients are really pretty good. So it has a positive effect. And that's another way that I practice.
Yeah, and we're friends, and
Mhm.
I have to say you're one of the most patient people that I know. You've been working on.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Wow. Yeah. You need to move out of the city.
Okay, fair point. But
Yeah.
well, I mean, I see you walking the walk and talking the talk. You know,
Yeah.
you do this,
Thank you.
which is great. Which also I'm sure made you a great police officer. Do you ever miss it sometimes?
Oh, I miss it all the time. I miss it and hate it at the same time. I left 5 years before retirement to, I was pushing within the culture for a long time. It was time to push from the outside. I had also found a point where I wasn't happy. And it was more than just, the normal, you're not happy at work for a month or two or whatever. I wasn't happy for about 6 months or so. And an unhappy police officer can create a lot of havoc and a lot of bad things. people were asking me to go train all over the country at that point in time, and I was enjoying that. So I left, and I left on my own accord, which is great. That's kind of rare. And then grew it from there. It would be nice to have my pension and have stayed, but I really do love and respect the work that policing's about at its core. I miss a lot of my colleagues, but then you look back at the exposure to traumatic events and life and death situations, and I don't miss a lot of those icky feelings. I'm still working through that. I probably always will be from the 15 years that I worked in the field and in a very active police department.
Sure, you saw a lot of things that would give anybody PTSD.
Amen. Very true.
So we can find out more on your website. What's your website?
It's justinboardman.com.
Fantastic.
And my email is justin@boardman.com, or you can just go to the website and find the contact and go from there.
Nice.
Mhm.
And you offer training in
Mhm.
trauma and sexual abuse and violence
All that sort of stuff, all that fun stuff.
Now, I would be remiss if we didn't talk just briefly about your hounding, because
Right.
you've been a lifelong rock hound, but now you're kicking it up a notch.
I am. In our current state of affairs in the country, the people that hire me are usually nonprofits that work from government grants. And right now, those aren't as obtainable as they have been in the past.
Right.
So, my rock hounding and collecting rocks, something I always love to do anyway. So I figured, maybe I'd try to do some of this part time on the side to make up for some of those, if you will. And right now, I'm starting to grow that on Facebook. I think it's Justin's Rocks Adventures in Art, and I've been traveling around and doing fun things like that, and finding, crystals or other types of stones. I also make cabochons for silversmiths, and I'll silversmith a little bit on the side, but I haven't gotten that part of the studio back up and running yet. I've still been unpacking. I moved to Kansas about a year or so ago, and still in storage units. So
Yeah.
thank you for that.
You're starting to travel around and like do shows and have tables at
Yeah,
fairs, gem and mineral shows, hopefully metaphysical fairs soon.
right. I hope so.
I know. I'd love to have you here in Kansas City for the metaphysical fair. That'd be awesome.
I would love that.
Be great. But you've also been to Madagascar, Brazil, and
Yeah.
all over the United States.
Yes. Digging rocks. Yep, a nice getaway to travel. And as we travel the world too, and you learn a lot more about people. It all goes hand in hand. So it's been kind of fun. So
That's
yeah.
nice. All right. Well, my guest today has been Justin Boardman, who can be found at justinboardman.com for all types of training in empathy and trauma response. And then just find him at a metaphysical fair selling rocks.
Exactly.
Thank you for joining me today, Justin. It's great
Absolutely.
to see you as always. Don't know what to watch next? Decisions. Well, we've got some suggestions. You can click this little video here and watch that. It's something that we think you're going to like. If you like the last one, you're going to like that one too. You can also click on the subscribe button. And if you do that, then you'll get notifications whenever we have a new video up. Win-win, right?